Don't panic, the man said, calm as a surgeon. I'll go in gently. The scream died in her throat. Not because she wanted it to. Because his voice, smooth, precise, terrifyingly controlled, cut through her panic like a scalpel through skin. She pressed her back against the cold glass wall. 43 floors up. Seoul's skyline glittered below like broken diamonds scattered across black velvet. The room smelled like leather and something sharp. Antiseptic, maybe. Or fear. He didn't move closer. That was worse. Hi, welcome to this beautiful storytelling channel. Thanks for watching. Kindly subscribe to my channel and tell me what country you are watching from. His hands were steady. Not shaking. Not rushed. Like he'd done this 1,000 times before. Like her terror was expected. Calculated even. Why? Her voice cracked. Why are you doing this? He tilted his head. Dark eyes. No emotion. Just cold focus. Because you're ready. Ready. She wasn't ready for anything. She'd walked into this penthouse thinking it was a business meeting. Thinking she was in control. Thinking her reputation, her brilliance, her untouchable record would protect her. But the door locked behind her with a soft click. And now she was here. Trapped between glass and a man who spoke like death wore a suit. He took one step forward. She flinched. He stopped. Smiled. Not kindness. Just certainty. You don't understand yet, he said quietly. But you will. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Every instinct screamed run. But there was nowhere to go. The glass behind her was floor to ceiling. Bulletproof probably. The door? Locked. The city below? 43 floors of empty air. She was alone. Completely alone. With him. He reached into his jacket. Her breath stopped. But he didn't pull out a weapon. He pulled out a file. Cream-colored. Expensive paper. The kind governments used for classified documents. He held it out to her. Open it. She didn't move. Open it, he repeated. Still calm. Still surgical. Or I will. Her hands shook as she took it. The paper felt heavy. Too heavy for something so thin. She opened it. And froze. The first page was a photograph. Of her. Taken 3 years ago. In a city she'd never told anyone she'd visited. The second page was worse. A list. Names. Dates. Locations. Threats neutralized before they ever reached her. Dangers she never knew existed. People removed from her orbit before they could get close. Her stomach turned. What is this? He stepped closer. Close enough she could smell his cologne. Expensive. Cold. Protection, he said simply. I never asked for. You didn't have to. His eyes locked onto hers. And for the first time, she saw something flicker behind that calm mask. Obsession. What terrified her wasn't what he was about to do, the silence seemed to whisper. It was how long he'd clearly been preparing for it. The woman screaming in that room was the same woman governments trusted with secrets they couldn't afford to lose. Her name was Zara Okoro. Not the kind of name you forgot. Not the kind of woman you underestimated twice. At 28, she'd predicted 3 market crashes before they happened. At 30, she'd restructured failing corporations in 14 countries. At 35, she was the woman CEOs called when their empires were crumbling and they needed someone who could see the cracks before the foundation split. She didn't guess. She calculated. She saw patterns in chaos. Numbers and noise. She could walk into a boardroom full of liars and spot the truth in 60 seconds flat. That's why they paid her 7 figures per consultation. That's why intelligence agencies quietly slid her classified reports and waited for her analysis. Because Zara Okoro didn't miss. Ever. She'd survived rooms full of men who wanted her to fail. Survived systems designed to crush women who looked like her. Survived betrayals, sabotage, threats whispered in 5 different languages. She didn't survive by being soft. She survived by being sharper than everyone else in the room. So when she walked into that penthouse in Seoul, invited by a private equity firm she'd vetted 3 times, she thought she had control. She thought she'd mapped every variable. She thought wrong. Because for the first time in her life, Someone had been 5 steps ahead of her. And she never saw him coming. That terrified her more than the locked door. More than the file. More than his cold, surgical calm. Because if she missed this, if she missed him, what else had she been blind to? Her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. Threat after threat. Danger after danger. All eliminated before they ever touched her. A competitor who'd hired someone to discredit her gone. Fired. Bankrupt within a month. A journalist digging into her past, reassigned. To a desk job. In another country. A man who'd followed her home one night in London, hospitalized. No charges. No explanation. She looked up at him. You've been watching me for 3 years? Longer. Her pulse spiked. Why? He didn't blink. Didn't hesitate. Because you mattered. For words. For words that shattered everything she thought she knew about power. She'd spent her entire life believing control came from intelligence. From preparation. From seeing threats before they materialized. But he'd been controlling her world without her even knowing it existed. That wasn't protection. That was ownership. She dropped the file. I don't need you. He smiled. Slow. Certain. I know. And that smile told her everything. He didn't want her to need him. He wanted her to choose him. Her breath caught. Because buried underneath her anger, underneath her fear, there was something worse. Curiosity. She wanted to know how deep this went. How long he'd been watching. How much of her life had been shaped by his invisible hand. And he knew it. She saw it in his eyes. He'd been waiting for this moment. The moment she stopped running. And started asking questions. He never pursued her, which is how she knew he was dangerous. His name was Kwon Jihyuk. 27 years old. CEO of Biko Holdings. A name whispered in boardrooms across 3 continents. But that wasn't what made him dangerous. What made him dangerous was his stillness. Most powerful men chased. They pursued. They demanded attention, respect, fear. Jihyuk did none of that. He simply appeared. In rooms he shouldn't have access to. At events he wasn't invited to. In conversations he had no reason to join. And no one questioned it. Because by the time they noticed him, he was already indispensable. He spoke 3 sentences where others needed 300. He made decisions in seconds that took committees months. He never raised his voice. Never threatened. Never needed to. People bent to him because he made bending feel inevitable. Zara had first seen him 2 years ago. A summit in Geneva. Exclusive. Invitation only. She'd been keynoting on economic fragility in emerging markets. He sat in the 3rd row. Didn't take notes. Didn't check his phone. Just watched. Not her slides. Her. When she finished, he was gone. But 3 days later, an investment opportunity appeared in her inbox. And signed. Untraceable. High risk, high reward. Exactly the kind of project she specialized in. She took it. Made $14 million in 6 months. Only later did she realize the shell company that funded it was owned by Biko Holdings. He'd been testing her. The second time she saw him was in Tokyo. Different conference. Different continent. Same seat. 3rd row. Same stare. This time, when she finished, he was waiting by the exit. You're wasting your talent, he said. No introduction. No small talk. She raised an eyebrow. Excuse me? Fixing broken systems. He tilted his head. You should be building new ones. And you know this how? He smiled. Not warm. Not cold. Just certain. Because I've been watching you decide whether you're brave enough to try. Then he walked away. No business card. No follow-up. Nothing. But 2 weeks later, another opportunity appeared. Then another. Then another. Each one perfectly calibrated to her skills. Each one unsigned. Each one profitable. She started recognizing the pattern. He wasn't chasing her. He was positioning her. Like pieces on a board she didn't know she was playing on. And the worst part, it worked. Every move he made brought her closer. Not to him. To the version of herself he seemed to already see. Stronger. Bolder. More ruthless. She hated that it excited her. Hated that part of her wanted to know what he saw when he looked at her. Hated that she'd started looking for him in crowded rooms. And now, standing in this penthouse with a file full of secrets, she finally understood. He never chased her because he didn't need to. He'd already caught her. 3 years ago, before she ever knew the game had started. They never touched, and that was the problem. Zara slammed the file onto the glass table. You think this is romantic? Jihyuk didn't flinch. I think it's honest. Honest. She laughed. Sharp. Bitter. You've been stalking me for 3 years. Protecting you. Without my consent. You were too proud to ask. Silence. Her jaw tightened. Because he was right. She never asked for help. Never admitted weakness. Never let anyone close enough to see the cracks. And somehow he'd seen them anyway. You don't know me, she said coldly. I know you take your coffee black because milk reminds you of childhood poverty. I know you never sit with your back to the door. I know you haven't spoken to your mother in 6 years because she told you ambition would make you lonely. Her breath stopped. I know, he continued, voice soft and brutal, that you lie awake at 3 a.m. wondering if success was worth what you sacrificed to get it. Her hands curled into fists. Stop. Why? He stepped closer. Still not touching. Just close enough she could feel the heat of him. Because I'm right? Or because no one's ever paid attention long enough to notice? She wanted to slap him. She wanted to scream. But more than that, she wanted to know how he knew. You're a monster, she whispered. Maybe. His eyes never left hers. But I'm the monster who made sure you survived long enough to hate me. Her heart pounded. This wasn't seduction. This was war. And she didn't know if she was losing or if she'd already lost. Why me? She asked. Finally, the question she'd been avoiding. He smiled. Slow. Devastating. Because you're the only person I've ever met who's as dangerous as I am. And before she could respond, he said the words that changed everything. You're already inside the perimeter, Zara. You have been since the day we met. The jet wasn't flashy, which is why it scared her. 72 hours later, she was 30,000 feet over the Pacific Ocean. Private jet. Leather seats. No logo. No branding. Nothing that screamed wealth. Just quiet, lethal efficiency. Exactly like him. Jihyuk sat across from her, reading a report. Hadn't looked up in 20 minutes. She should have said no. When he'd texted her the coordinates. When the car arrived at her hotel. When the driver opened the door and she saw the plane waiting. She should have walked away. But she didn't. Because buried under her fury was something more dangerous. Curiosity. She needed to know how deep this went. How much of her life he'd shaped. How much was left that was truly hers. So she got on the plane. And now, flying toward an island she'd never heard of, she realized the trap. It wasn't the locked doors. It wasn't the guards. It was the comfort. The jet was perfect. Temperature exactly how she liked it. Food she didn't have to ask for. Silence when she needed to think. He'd built a cage so comfortable she didn't notice the bars. Where are we going? She asked. Somewhere no one will interrupt. That's not an answer. He finally looked up. You wanted the truth. The truth requires time. And privacy. Her stomach tightened. This is insane. Is it? He set the report down. You've spent 3 days trying to find a hole in my story. Trying to prove I'm lying. You haven't found one. Because there wasn't one. Every detail checked out. Every threat real. Every intervention documented. He'd been telling the truth. And that was worse than any lie. I could have handled it myself, she said. Maybe. Or maybe you'd be dead. The bluntness hit like a slap. You don't know that. I do. His voice dropped. Because I'm the one who stopped it. The plane began its descent. She looked out the window. An island. Small. Private. Surrounded by turquoise water that looked like a postcard. Beautiful. Isolated. She should have felt trapped. But she didn't. She felt safe. And that realization terrified her more than anything he'd said. Because if she felt safe with him, if part of her wanted this, what did that make her? The plane touched down. Jihyuk stood. Extended his hand. Trust me. 2 words. 2 words she'd never said to anyone. She stared at his hand and realized the worst part. She was actually considering it. The file was dated 3 years before they met. Zara found it on the 3rd night. The villa was perfect. Too perfect. Glass walls overlooking the ocean. Minimalist furniture. Everything positioned exactly where she'd want it. Her favorite books on the shelf. Her preferred wine in the cellar. Even the pillows, firm, not soft, matched her taste. He'd built this place for her. Before she ever agreed to come. That thought sat heavy in her chest as she explored the study. Jihyuk had gone to handle a call. Left her alone. Trusted her not to run. Or maybe he knew she wouldn't. She hated that he was right. The desk was unlocked. Unusual for a man who controlled everything. Unless he wanted her to look. She opened the top drawer. And froze. A file. Identical to the one in Seoul. Same cream paper. Same government-grade quality. But the date on the cover made her blood run cold. April 2019. 3 years before they met. Her hands shook as she opened it. The first page was a dossier. On her. But not recent. This was from 7 years ago. When she was nobody. Just another analyst scraping by in Lagos, trying to build a name in a world that didn't want her to succeed. Photo attached. Younger. Hungrier. Scared but hiding it. Beneath it, a single handwritten note. Target identified. High potential. Requires protection and strategic positioning. Timeline. 36 to 48 months. Her stomach dropped. The next pages were worse. A timeline. Detailed. Specific. 2019. Neutralized competitor attempting corporate sabotage. 2020. Remove journalist investigating family history. 2021. Eliminate physical threat in London. 2022. First direct contact. Geneva Summit. Every intervention. Every danger removed. Every opportunity created. All planned. All calculated. He hadn't stumbled into her life. He'd engineered it. She heard footsteps behind her. Jihyuk stood in the doorway. Calm. Unsurprised. You left this for me to find, she said quietly. Yes. Why? He walked toward her. Slow. Deliberate. Because you needed to know the truth. All of it. She held up the file, her hand trembling with rage. You decided I mattered before you even met me? Yes. Why? Her voice cracked. Why me? He stopped 3 feet away. Close enough to reach. Far enough to let her breathe. Because 7 years ago, I watched you walk into a boardroom full of men who wanted you to fail. I watched you dismantle their arguments in 11 minutes. I watched you walk out with a contract they swore they'd never sign. His eyes locked onto hers. And I realized you were the rarest thing in the world. Someone who could survive any system. Build anything from nothing. Someone who didn't need power handed to them because they'd take it anyway. Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. You didn't fall in love with me, she whispered. You fell in love with what you thought I could become. No. His voice was firm. Final. I fell in love with what you already were. I just made sure the world didn't kill you before you realized it. Her chest tightened, because underneath her anger, underneath her fear, there was something she didn't want to admit. Gratitude. He'd seen her when she was nobody, when she was just a woman fighting to survive in a world designed to break her. And he'd decided she was worth protecting. Not because she asked, because she deserved it. You had no right, she said. I know. You controlled my entire life. I removed obstacles. The choices were always yours. That's not. When did you decide I mattered? He interrupted softly. She froze. Because that was the question, wasn't it? When had she stopped being afraid? When had she started looking for him in crowded rooms? When had his absence started feeling like a loss? She didn't have an answer. And that terrified her more than anything in the file. Because if she couldn't pinpoint the moment she started caring, maybe he'd been right all along. Maybe she'd been his from the beginning. And she just hadn't known it yet. He didn't deny it, he justified it. Zara threw the file at him. Papers scattered across the marble floor like broken promises. You don't get to decide what's best for me. Jihyuk didn't move. Didn't bend down to pick up the pages. Just stood there, absorbing her rage like he'd been expecting it. I never decided what was best for you, he said calmly. I removed what was worst. That's the same thing. No, it's not. She wanted to scream. Wanted to break something. Wanted to hurt him the way he'd hurt her, by turning her entire life into a lie. You watched me, she said, voice shaking. For years. You manipulated every opportunity. Every success I thought I earned. You earned it. His voice cut through hers like steel. Every single one. I didn't make you brilliant. I didn't make you ruthless. I didn't make you survive. He stepped closer. I just made sure you lived long enough to become who you already were. Her breath caught. You're twisting this. Am I? He tilted his head. The journalist digging into your past? He found evidence your mother sold information about you to your competitors. I stopped him from publishing it. Was that wrong? She went silent. The man who followed you in London? He wasn't random. He was hired. By someone who wanted you discredited. Or worse. I made sure he never got close. Was that wrong? Her chest tightened. The competitor who tried to destroy your reputation? He was planning to fabricate sexual harassment claims. Frame you publicly. Ruin everything you'd built. I bankrupted him before he could. Was that wrong? Each word hit like a hammer. Because he wasn't lying. Every threat was real. Every intervention necessary. But that didn't make it right. You didn't ask my permission, she whispered. Would you have given it? No. She wouldn't have. She would have fought alone. Risked everything. Died before admitting she needed help. And he knew that. You took my choice away, she said. I gave you choices you wouldn't have survived to make. Silence. Thick. Heavy. Unbearable. She stared at him. This man who'd controlled her life. Protected her. Loved her. Owned her. Is this love? She asked quietly. Or is this just surveillance with better intentions? He didn't hesitate. It's both. The honesty gutted her. Most men would have lied. Would have dressed it up as romance. As destiny. But Jihyuk didn't lie. He loved her. And he'd been watching her every move for 7 years. Both things were true. And she didn't know which one terrified her more. I can't do this, she said. Yes, you can. You don't know what I know you better than you know yourself. His voice dropped. Softer now. Almost vulnerable. I know you're terrified that if you let someone in, they'll use it against you. I know you've never trusted anyone because everyone you've trusted has failed you. Her eyes burned. I know, he continued, that you've been alone your entire life. Not because you wanted to be, but because it was safer than hoping someone would stay. A tear slipped down her cheek. Damn him. Damn him for seeing her. For knowing her. For making her feel less alone while simultaneously trapping her. I removed the danger, he said quietly. But the choice was always yours. She looked at him. Really looked. And saw something she hadn't expected. Fear. He was afraid. Afraid she'd walk away. Afraid she'd hate him. Afraid that after 7 years of planning, protecting, positioning, she'd choose to leave. And that scared him more than anything. Because control meant nothing if she didn't choose him. What if I leave? She whispered. He smiled. Sad. Resigned. Then I let you go. The jet was ready, and no one stopped her. Zara woke up to silence. No Jihyuk. No guards. No locked doors. Just a note on the nightstand. The jet leaves at noon. No conditions. No threats. You're free to go. She stared at it for 10 minutes. Waiting for the catch. There was always a catch. But when she walked downstairs, the villa was empty. No staff. No security. Just her and the sound of waves crashing against the shore. The jet sat on the runway. Engines idling. Pilot waiting. She could leave. Right now. Walk away from this insanity. From him. From whatever twisted love story he thought they were writing. She should have run. Should have sprinted to that plane and never looked back. But she didn't. Because for the first time in her life, someone had given her a choice without strings attached. and it broke something inside her. Every man before Jihyuk had wanted something. Her body, her brilliance, her connections, her silence. They'd all tried to cage her in different ways. But he was the only one who'd opened the door. She walked to the study, the files still scattered across the floor. She knelt, started picking up the pages. Her life, mapped out, year by year, threat by threat. He'd spent 7 years keeping her alive. Not because he owned her, because he believed she mattered. And now he was letting her go. The cruelty of it hit her like a wave. Because this freedom was worse than captivity. Captivity she could fight. Freedom meant she had to decide. Did she believe him? Did she trust that his love wasn't just control with a prettier name? Did she want a man who'd seen her at her weakest and decided she was worth protecting anyway? Her hands trembled as she stacked the papers. She heard footsteps. Jihyuk stood in the doorway, eyes red, like he hadn't slept. "The jet's ready," he said quietly. "I know. You should go." She looked up at him. "Should I?" He hesitated. First time she'd ever seen him unsure. "I don't know." His voice cracked. "I've spent 7 years planning everything. Every move. Every outcome. But this? I can't plan this." "Why not?" "Because the only outcome that matters is the one you choose." He stepped closer. Stopped. "And I can't control that." For the first time, she saw him completely. Not the CEO. Not the strategist. Not the man who played chess with people's lives. Just a man who'd fallen in love and didn't know if it would be enough. "What if I stay?" she asked. His breath caught. "Then we start over. No files. No plans. Just us. Can you do that? Give up control." He smiled. Broken. Honest. "For you? I'd give up everything." And she believed him. That's what scared her most. She believed him. Freedom didn't feel the way she expected. Zara stayed. Not because she forgave him. Because she needed to know if this was real. 1 week passed. Then 2. Jihyuk kept his word. No control. No plans. No watching from the shadows. He asked her what she wanted for breakfast. Where she wanted to go. What she needed. He didn't assume. He asked. And it felt wrong. Because she'd spent her entire life fighting for autonomy. Clawing her way out of poverty. Building empires from nothing. Independence was her religion. But now, sitting across from a man who'd seen every ugly truth about her and stayed anyway, independence felt lonely. "What are you thinking?" Jihyuk asked one morning. They were on the terrace. Coffee. Sunrise. Quiet. She didn't answer right away. "I'm thinking," she said slowly, "that I don't know who I am without the fight." He set his cup down. "What do you mean?" "I've spent 35 years proving I'm enough. Smart enough. Strong enough. Worthy enough." She looked at him. "But you already decided I was. 7 years ago. Before I proved anything." "Yes. So what do I do now?" He reached across the table. Took her hand. First time he'd touched her without asking. "You stop proving. And start living." Tears burned her eyes. Because it sounded so simple. But she didn't know how. She didn't know how to exist without armor. Without strategy. Without the constant calculation of risk versus reward. She didn't know how to just be. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Of what?" "That if I stop fighting, I'll disappear." Jihyuk's grip tightened. "You won't." "How do you know?" "Because I see you. Not what you've built. Not what you've achieved. You. And you're more than enough." She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to. But 35 years of trauma didn't disappear because one man said pretty words. That night, she couldn't sleep. She went to the study, opened her laptop, and froze. A new file sat in her inbox. No sender. No subject. Just a document. Her hands shook as she opened it. It was a dossier. On Jihyuk. Every deal. Every threat. Every person he'd removed from her life. But also, every person he'd removed from his life. Rivals. Enemies. People who'd tried to hurt him. And at the bottom, a note. You weren't the only one being protected. He has enemies too. And now that you're close to him, You're a target. Her blood ran cold. This wasn't the end of the story. It was the transfer of power. Zara found Jihyuk in his office. She slammed the laptop on his desk. Explain this. He looked at the screen. No shock. No panic. Just resignation. I was going to tell you. When? After I was dead. You're not going to die. You don't know that. She slammed her hand on the desk. You said you removed the danger. But all you did was paint a target on my back. I painted a target on my back, he corrected. You just chose to stand next to me. I didn't choose this. Yes, you did. His voice was quiet. Final. The moment you stayed. The moment you stopped running. You chose this. She hated that he was right. Who are they? She demanded. People I've destroyed. People who want revenge. And you thought dragging me into this was okay? I thought, he said slowly, that you were strong enough to survive it. Her breath caught. What if I'm not? He stood, walked around the desk, stopped inches from her. Then I'll make sure you are. By controlling me again? No. He cupped her face. Gentle. Reverent. By standing beside you. Not in front. Not behind. Beside. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I don't know if I can do this. You can. How do you know? Because you're Zara Okoro. You've survived worse than me. Worse than them. You'll survive this too. She closed her eyes. Felt his forehead rest against hers. What if I want more than survival? She whispered. Then we build it. Together. The word settled between them. Together. Not him protecting her. Not her fighting alone. Together. She pulled back. Looked at him. Really looked. And made a choice. Not because she forgave him. Not because she trusted him completely. But because for the first time in her life, she wasn't alone. We do this my way, she said. What does that mean? It means no more files. No more plans. No more secrets. Agreed. It means you don't protect me. We protect each other. Agreed. And it means, she stepped closer, if you ever lie to me again, I'm gone. No second chances. He smiled. Deal. She kissed him. Not soft. Not gentle. Hard. Claiming. Choosing. When they pulled apart, she felt different. Not safe. Not controlled. Just seen. And maybe that was enough. The file sat open on the desk. Threats still real. Danger still coming. But for the first time, she wasn't facing it alone. She had a partner. A weapon. A man who'd burn the world down to keep her safe. And she'd do the same for him. This wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of the war. And Zara Okoro didn't lose wars. She won them.